At 06:30 on June 6, 1944, over 150,000 Allied troops converged on a 50-mile stretch of French coastline. Operation Overlord required thousands of ships and aircraft, meticulously coordinated to punch a hole through the German defenses. But for the men actually hitting the beaches, that macro strategy vanished. For an 18-year-old who had never seen combat, the universe shrank down to a 36-foot plywood box, slamming into the waves. Before the first shot was fired, the English Channel exacted a toll. Men were packed shoulder to shoulder in the landing craft, violently seasick from the swells. They were weighed down by up to 80 pounds of wet gear, ammunition, rations, and radios, which drained their energy before they ever saw land. Then the ramp drops. The rehearsed military plans and the months of training in England evaporated as boats drifted off target or grounded on sandbars hundreds of yards out. Jumping from the ramp meant plunging into the waist-deep water, fighting the current while under heavy, sustained machine gun fire from the bluffs. The noise was a physical concussive force, disorienting anyone trying to find their footing. In the surf, the chain of command shattered. Officers and radio men, burdened by distinct equipment, were targeted early or separated from their units by the shifting tides. At H-hour, the mission to liberate Europe felt distant. For the individual infantrymen, the only objective was surviving the next 200 yards to the cover of the seawall. Getting out of the water was only the first step. Soldiers wading through the surf now faced a wide expanse of open, waterlogged sand, entirely exposed to artillery and small arms fire zeroed in on their positions. The beach was littered with German-engineered obstacles, like this steel structure, the Czech Hedgehog. Its sharp, intersecting angles were designed to tear open landing craft at height hide, or funnel infantrymen directly into pre-sighted kill zones. Reaching the shingle, the rocky embankment at the high water mark, offered a brief moment of physical cover. But for many, stopping behind the seawall triggered an overwhelming psychological paralysis. This graph visualizes the biological mechanism behind that paralysis, known as acute combat shock. The central nervous system experiences a massive adrenaline spike during the terror of the water crossing. Once the immediate sprinting stops and the soldier hits the dirt, that overload is followed by a severe physiological drop, locking the body into a freeze response. Breaking out of that biological lock required spontaneous leadership. It fell to whoever could shake off the shock, often corporals or privates, to rally men, form ad hoc squads, and push off the beach. As the clock ticked into the early afternoon, the tactical objective shifted. To secure the beachhead, these newly formed squads had to scale the bluffs and neutralize the fortifications raining fire down on the sand. The defenders held a massive structural advantage, firing from pillboxes with thick concrete walls and narrow openings. To take them out, infantry exploited that limited field of view, navigating around the bunker's sightline to attack its blind spots with explosives. Pushing past the bluffs meant entering the bocage, the dense, towering hedges of the Norman countryside. The terrain restricted visibility, hiding enemy armor and snipers just yards away. By late afternoon, the initial panic had settled into a sharp, mechanical rhythm. The soldier no longer heard the individual cracks of the rifles. He was focused on the sight of his own M1 Garand, clearing jams and reloading clips on instinct. Success on the bluffs came down to yard-by-yard fighting. Small groups of sergeants and privates, acting without radio contact or orders from the rear, clawed their way through the dirt to clear one hedgerow at a time. By nightfall, hour 17 of the invasion, the physical toll compounded. After 12 hours of maximum adrenaline output, the body forcibly depletes its reserves, triggering a severe physiological crash that leaves muscles trembling and minds exhausted. Yet they had to dig in and hold the lines in pitch darkness. The anticipation of a sudden German armored counterattack turned the nighttime silence into a psychological test as grueling as the daylight gunfire. Finally, the clock hits hour 24. It is now D+1. The sun rises over the hedgerows, marking survival of the soldiers' first full day of combat. Back at headquarters in England, High Command analyzed the casualty reports and supply lines, viewing the success of the operation through a sterile top-down lens. But looking at the peaceful coastline today, where the concrete scars of those bunkers are still embedded in the green cliffs, reveals the true foundation of that success. The invasion was won because thousands of kids who hadn't slept in 30 hours, soaked in salt water and trembling from adrenaline depletion, stayed in their foxholes. They survived the longest day of their lives, becoming the veterans who would reach the Rhine.